Asia Wilson cannot be marketed with Caitlin Clark. Why is Asia Wilson playing the race card? The WNBA players grew the WNBA, but Caitlin Clark monetized the WNBA. Those are the questions that I want to address and want to get into it just on the strength of Asia Wilson, Time Magazine Woman of the Year. Really somewhat shocking because with Asia Wilson, it's a common goal. It's always going to be about social justice. And when it's that way, I bring it back to let you know that Asia Wilson, when you look at this and what she's got going on, and Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark, Asia Wilson cannot be marketed with Caitlin Clark. It's never going to work. It's never going to fit. Asia Wilson won Woman of the Year and said, I earned every bit of it. And Asia Wilson said something else shockingly and surprising that every night I look at my resume and what is my resume going to be or how's it going to turn out? That's kind of shocking. And, with Caitlin Clark, Caitlin has been over backwards for the WNBA players. Caitlin has bent over backwards for the WNBA players. She has sacrificed. She has not accepted um, sponsorship. She has not accepted roles. She didn't accept the NBA three-point contest. Why? For the protection of the women in the WNBA. However, when you get to Asia Wilson and you can't market them together, and here's why. Asia Wilson is straight plays the race card. That's it. That's Asia Wilson. That's the summary of it. I'm black. I am not privileged. Someone else gets more privileged than me, and it's like a broken record. It just keeps going on and on and on. So every time Asia Wilson wins her award, I mean, here comes the social injustice. I didn't treat it right, and part of that is just it's overshadowing what she's got as a basketball player, and no one can hear or listen to Asia Wilson because Asia Wilson is talking about one, herself, of how she's been mistreated. She talks about the eye, more eyes than I've ever seen. And also, Asia Wilson says, it's my resume. I mean, this is getting a little bit out of hand. And the reason it's getting out of hand because it goes in every single interview. Now, if you look at this, folks, and this is the Time 100 Women of the Year, right? And why am I bringing this to you? I mean, if you can look at some of the women of the year that are sitting there, if you look at Angela Davis, I mean, you got to look at a lot of women have sacrificed and given, okay, back to women's sports. Okay, and it's not just athletes. You got Sierra Williams, and then the other one that really just is shocking. I don't understand it because you can't market players who have expressed a dislike for a certain player. And when you look at this and you look at the list and everything, not everybody on this list has a dislike, but it's the way it's being done and it can't work. It will not work. They cannot be marketed together, right? Because it goes my second question. Why is every single time that Asia Wilson takes the microphone, it's a social injustice? And if you look at it collectively in corporate America, what do we do when there's a social injustice, or what do the reports say? The reports say that African Americans spend more money on social injustice than anything else that they buy, right? So if you're buying a social injustice t-shirt, you're buying this, you're buying that, there's no existence. And Money Mike's not saying that social injustice does not exist. I clearly understand it, but in America, in the times and the technology, you have to understand that every opportunity one is given to you. And you cannot fault somebody else. That's the story that's really going on. And now every time Asia Wilson speaks, it's always against I wasn't treated fairly. And I don't really get that. Asia Wilson is not taking the stand. And folks, at 61 years old, I've seen a lot of sports, right? I'm gonna show you Kirk Flood. See, this is different. Kurt Flood for free agency went against Major League Baseball. It cost him his career, right? It cost him his career. He couldn't make any more money in baseball. Nobody would hire him. Nobody would give him a job. And this is where I go back to Asia Wilson. And you got to ask yourself, with Asia Wilson, okay, you're not giving up your career and you're not giving up any money, right? And folks, for the WNBA players out there and for WNBA out there looking at this side, WNBA players, they make a lot of money, right? If you pulled all the tax reports and tax returns of all the WNBA players, you're gonna find out they make a whole lot more money than they're leading you on to believe. And when it comes to it, but here I'm back to Kurt Flood, right? And when you get to the race card, okay, Asia Wilson's not standing there like Colin Kaepernick, right? You're not going to lose your career. Okay, you're saying you're talking social injustice, but these individuals gave up their entire career for the fight of social justice. And that's something that I'll move because the race card doesn't play. Now, let's get to Caitlin Clark because I really have been worn out by these statements. I mean, I really have been worn out. And what do I mean by being worn out? I've been worn out by the fact of the WNBA players, the history of the WNBA players, that Caitlin Clark did not grow the WNBA. And Caitlin Clark did not grow women's basketball, right? So, with that point, I tend to disagree, right? Because, Caitlin had a 4-year head start at Iowa. Okay, the fans started coming in really as a freshman, but they were already coming in high school. Okay, so she's already built up her fan base, right? And the WNBA, the players should understand one thing, and Asia Wilson should understand it's about selling tickets. Now, here's what you got when you get a situation like that, and you get something where you got people that are fighting back and forth and going different places. I'm gonna tell you without a doubt, okay, Caitlin Clark, I get your point. Okay, Caitlin did not grow the WNBA. Okay, I get that. The WNBA was in existence. The WNBA was functioning. The WNBA was playing basketball. Okay, and the players have played over years, 28, 30 years. No doubt about it, right? But here's the flip side. Okay, Caitlin Clark didn't grow the WNBA, but Caitlin Clark monetized the WNBA. I repeat, Caitlin Clark monetized the WNBA. The WNBA was not going to see anywhere near the amount of money that they're seeing today if it weren't for Caitlin Clark, right? Because Caitlin has come in, okay, and has opened the floodgates to make money. So what's more important? If you want to take the title that the WNBA players, grew the game wasn't grown on Caitlin Clark or Caitlin Clark wasn't here. We've been playing for 30 years. You could take that, but you had no monetization. You weren't making any money, right? And if you're not making money, then what do you actually have? Okay, you got a hobby. You got a hobby that's what they say in the business world, corporate America. I mean, if you get in business and there's no revenue, you're not turning a profit. Basically, you have a hobby that you enjoy. Now, the women who played in the WNBA all these years, they played because they loved the game of basketball, right? It was never they were in the game of basketball. They never looked at it as we're going to be marketing in the game of basketball. They never looked at, okay, let's go out and get fans to come in here and see this. And they never tracked this as a metric to say, okay, what can we do? And looking at our target audience and then getting involved into the acquisition cost of how much it costs to retain a fan, right? But when you look at Caitlin Clark, this started at Iowa as a freshman. Iowa, as a freshman, the fans were coming in. When it got to the sophomore year, the fans were coming even more. Got to the junior year, the fans were exploding trying to get to Caitlin Clark. When you got to the senior year of Caitlin Clark, the fans couldn't even get a ticket. Now, you want to talk about did they grow the women's game? Well, what's the metric of the measurement, right? Because with Caitlin, if you look at TV viewership, she's dominated the WNBA players. That's monetization, folks. When you look at sellouts in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark has sold out every game she's ever played in the WNBA. That's monetization, folks. When you look at commercials, State Farm, you got LGPA, you got the golf, you got NFL, you got NASCAR, you got the NBA. Okay, and Caitlin, they all want Caitlin. So what has Caitlin did? She monetized okay, the WNBA. And there's opportunities that she will turn down that somebody else can get. This is where I'm going with this, folks, because I really want to just break this down because I've been listening and really, Caitlin Clark, and if you look at it, Caitlin Clark and Asia Wilson can't be marketed together. They just can't. You can't put them both together to think something's going to come out of this. And I think for the social justice that the women, the African American women, who are saying they grew the game of the WNBA, you did, but you didn't monetize it. So nobody really cares how great you grew the game. And the excuse of being in the league for 30 years, that's not an excuse because now what you got is Asia Wilson speaking so loudly, you're turning off the fans. You're turning off the fans. They're going to walk away. And, it really doesn't matter. And she made a comment that, okay, I want to stay in Las Vegas for my entire career. You got to check with Mark Davis, NFL, because he's not a fan of controversy, right? But when you get right to it, folks, I'm just going to tell you just the way it is. Okay. And when I tell you just the way it is, a lot of times I'm not going to be most popular, right? And I'll never get it to where I always come out and say like and subscribe because some of the things I'm talking about may not be likable, right? But this one here is way likable, and I'll tell you why. You got Asia Wilson, ain't no doubt about it, right? But hasn't taken the step of a Kurt Flood and hasn't taken the step of Colin Kaepernick. You talk about social injustice, they took the step and sacrificed their careers, right? Caitlin Clark, ain't no doubt about it, never brings up the race card, hasn't said a word all career. It ain't even been a year yet, folks, and the WNBA is screaming and hollering and white privilege and this and that. Well, you know what? In America, that's the way it's supposed to be. All right, you get your fans, I got my fans. Don't get mad at Caitlin because she has more fans because it's really not about social injustice then. It's about jealousy, right? Everybody's jealous of Caitlin Clark because Caitlin Clark monetized. But there's been other players that have monetized. Coke off, no doubt about it, right? You want to talk about a woman athlete that's standing above all, right? $30 million a year in endorsement fees, gave a $100,000 contribution to the HBCU. Right? So sometimes you stand for the cause, you believe in it, but you got to fulfill it. And if you don't fulfill it, it'll never happen, folks. That's the story. And when you get there, you can't cross-market the two. Caitlin needs to be on her own. Nike, you run Caitlin as her own, and Coco Gauff, boy, I'll tell you. You want to talk about a champion? That's a champion there, folks. Ain't no doubt about it, the WNBA, and that's still. You know what? We don't get these kind of things coming out. I don't know if she thinks she's privileged or not, but the game is a game, and this is the way it goes. But I'll tell you this. I'll wrap it up. The WNBA, Nike, cannot market Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark together, right? Asia Wilson's message is not an America's message. She's got a different agenda that she believes in, and that's her right to do so. But it doesn't have to be brought into the world of everybody else because we don't have to believe what anybody says that's saying, hey, I believe in America, right? And it's not social injustice, right? So you got to live with that. And once you live with it, you can kind of dance your way around it and say to yourself, hey, one day there will be change, but it may not be today. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. You got Asia Wilson, Time Magazine Woman of the Year. But every time she speaks, she talks about my resume, and I'm the best. I. Sacrifice is what it's about, being Time Magazine Woman of the Year. Well, there's been some powerful women that have taken a stance in America, right? You go all the way back to Title IX, Stanford Communications, Stanford getting in there, writing it up. I mean, there's been a lot of injustice. But if we don't move past this, the WNBA, it's not going to go anywhere. But the good news is there's a whole new crop coming, and they just want to play basketball. This is the Monday Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We're powered up and coming to you. We got Too Hot Radio under the umbrella of Rock Nation, bringing you the game just the way it's supposed to be brought. All things are possible to those who believe. And I believe that God's got a hand in this. I look at Michelle Obama. I look at the great women that have done all they have done, sacrificed their lives for the sake of social justice and women empowerment. The equity and equality, the pay, every step you take, it has to be given because only in America do you get an opportunity to be who you are, do what you are, and stand alone. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. I'm feeling good about it, but I wanted to bring that to you because it's been on my heart for a long time. All things are possible to those who believe. You stay tuned. We'll see you soon.